We all have the same amount of time, don't we? Same 24 hours in a day that we can choose to use. Some people need a little bit of a willful suspension of disbelief to be able to go and see a Marvel movie. It's obviously not real, but it's really entertaining if that's your thing. But you have the same amount of time as I do. And you spend time doing the things that you find most beneficial for you. I think that many leaders tend to forget the best way to focus their time in ways that are not just beneficial for the work that they have in hand, but also for themselves and also for their family and for the most important people in their lives. Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Train, business, leadership, and culture consultant and Vistage CEO, Peer Advisory Group Chair. And I'm joined by my friend, Jim Bob Howard, veteran technical consultant. Together, we have more than 60 combined years of business and organizational experience. The purpose of this podcast is to have short but meaningful discussions about the people and culture side of business and how owners and executives can be both kind and successful. Welcome to the Nice Business Podcast. I'm Richard Train, and I'm here with my good friend Jim Bob Howard. And our guest today is Brett Hurt with the Love Conquers Fear podcast, as well as his upcoming book. And gosh, there's so much here, Brett, with regards to what's in your podcast and what's in your book. And I'll let you go into that in a minute, but I just have to say that it was just an amazing when I listened to your podcast.
Thank
and
you.
It speaks so much to kind of where I am in my professional life these days. I'm a man of a certain age, and I'm thinking very much about legacy, what I'm putting out into the world and what I'm leaving behind. And specifically with regards to this podcast, and Jim Bob, I know you have some thoughts on this, where we are really speaking to leaders in business. And how does what you do really impact leadership, and what can people learn from it? Jim Bob, do you want to say anything about it before we introduce Brett?
Sure. Yeah. And I've just a little bit of background. I met Brett in college, and we knew each other a little bit there while we were in college, but I've been following, his career, all of the different ventures that he's had over the last, let's call it decades. And it's been great to watch, at least from this sideline. And what I'd love for us to talk about today is, and I definitely want you to give your full bio for sure, Brett. But what I'd love for us to talk about today is, what are those lessons learned? What did you learn and when? How did you apply that? How did that come out from a business leadership perspective? But also know too that now where you are within your career and within your life, the Love Conquers Fear is important to you. And it's something that you're looking to have a really big impact everywhere that you can, but I know your focus is global, how you're going to spend those next 10 years. I know that some of our listeners are going to be not even thinking there yet. They're not even getting into that, but some of them will be. Some of them are ready to turn that corner and say, hey, I've done this so far. What is my legacy going to be like? And I'd love for it to dig into a little bit from that perspective as well too. But yeah, we're looking to have a good time talking with you today. I know you've got some great stories that we're going to dive into. So I'll let you take it away and let our audience know about you.
Thank you so much. Again, it's a real honor to be here. And thanks so much, Richard and Jim Bob. So, I've been fortunate to be at the right place at the right time with the right skill set. Like Jim Bob, I went to UT Austin. I majored in management information systems. When I got into UT, I thought I was going to do computer science, but back then the final projects were creating printer drivers, and I just couldn't see myself doing that. I've been programming since I was 7 years old. And the software that I created alongside great teams since I was age 10, from my bulletin board system to age 18 with my internet game, were always used by people, and I got a lot of feedback on it. And a printer driver either works or it doesn't work, right? And so the MIS program set me up well. And, nobody had to push me to program. My mom introduced it to me at age 7. And then I think was kind of astonished. That's all I wanted to do. I did that over 40 hours a week for my whole childhood. It pulled me. I thought that I could help manifest a better world through technology. And I've been working on that divine purpose ever since I was a kid. And it's manifested in a lot of different businesses now, from Core Metrics, which grew into a global web analytics provider during the heyday of the initial days of e-commerce. And we had a $300 million exit there. to IBM, to Bazaar Voice, which really popularized customer reviews all over the internet for e-commerce sites and brands that sold through places like Walmart and Target and the Home Depot. And we had $1 billion IPO there. And then data.world, which was my sixth venture, which ServiceNow just acquired on 7/7, which interestingly enough is my divine number. And we can talk about that. I'm a very spiritual person. And so Love Conquers Fear really is the manifestation of my whole career and my whole childhood passion, because I see a world where the exponential age of AI, quantum computing, robotics, brain computer interfaces is getting we're so in the upward part of that curve that to me, a week of tech progress this year in 2025 feels like a year of tech progress 10 years ago.
Easily.
And we have to manifest our better angels as humanity to allow love to conquer fear. We can't continue to play the zero sum, competitive, scarcity, fear based mindset, which is a tall order for humanity because we've been playing that game for a long time. One of the things I remind my listeners on the Love Conquers Fear podcast is that all three of us are in the top 1% of all Homo sapiens. And what I mean by that is that everybody listening to this has electricity. And electricity has only existed for 0.1% of the time that Homo sapiens have been here on Earth. That's around 300,000 years. So we have abundance today that would be unimaginable to our ancestors several hundred years ago, several thousand years ago. We would appear as gods to them. They would look at our technology as magical. They would say, wait, you can get multiple types of blueberries in this thing called a supermarket, and you're driving something there. What is driving? You know, what are these fire breathing beasts that you're taking? They just wouldn't even know how to process what we are today. And I think that we'll survive this moment, this exponential age, and have an age of abundance that we can't imagine. If we could go into a time machine 100 years from now, I think we'd be astonished at what we would see. And my message for all of the leaders listening to this is that you have to choose what kind of leadership style you want to have. I made that choice when I was very young. I was a 24-year-old CEO when I first gave myself that title. Nobody gave me that title, right? The easiest way to get it is to start something. I had no idea what I was doing. I had just graduated from the Wharton School where I got my MBA. I was a proud Longhorn, went there for undergrad. That's where I met my soulmate, Deborah, who actually Richard knows. It's a small world. So it's crazy kind of social connection that we have here between Richard and Deborah and Jim, Bob, and me. And I was just reading hundreds and hundreds of management and leadership books, trying to stay above water to figure out what the hell I was doing. And I tried on different leadership styles. And I have had a lot of love put in my heart since my mom really introduced me to my passion and let me do that without prejudice from 1979 on. But I decided pretty early on that I was going to lead through love, and that love was the most important force in the universe. If you think about the movies that we love, they tend to be the hero's journey, which ends in the arc of triumph, usually in acts of love. And that would be much more beneficial for me and my own regulatory system, the toxins in my body, et cetera, as well as the people that I work with. And that would bring out a level of passion in them that's different than a fear-based mindset. Right. And look, fear is very prevalent in the world. It's all over. Because we dealt with scarcity for so long with no electricity and no running water and no hot showers and all of these things that we take for granted these days, although not every country has those. Like countries like Chad have a GDP of $660 a person, versus us having $85,800 a person. America is the country with the largest GDP per person in the world. We have so much abundance right now that we need to realize and appreciate that, and appreciate what we have, and overcome our amygdala. And our amygdala is where our fears manifest. And look, it's a lot bigger business to hijack someone's amygdala. That is what the media is doing to us every day. That is what social media is doing to us every day. It is
Right.
algorithmically seeking to keep us in a state of fear. And you can motivate people with fear, but it is very toxic for you. It's very toxic for them. It tends to burn people out. And if you motivate people through love, people work just as hard as if, and maybe even harder, and stay longer than if they're motivated by fear. To be able to motivate people by love, you have to start with conquering your own demons and your own fears. And if you do that hard work, and I don't care if you get there through spirituality like I have, or you get there through stoicism, or you get there through philosophical systems that I've studied like Vedanta, which is an ancient spiritual philosophical tradition that comes out of India. I've studied a lot of these things and I've done a lot of the internal work so that I can act from a place where I have conquered my own fears and I can manifest more love. And when you can do that, you can manifest that in other people because you've done the hard work. So you know how to help them reach that stage. And one of the things I love about leadership and entrepreneurship is seeing people do things that they don't think they would have been able to do, seeing them reach new heights. I mean, the amazing thing about Bizarre Voice, which had the over $1 billion IPO, is that there are now 70 companies that have been started by former Bizarre Voice people.
Wow.
And the cumulative capitalist impact of that, not just the 850 jobs we created at Bizarre Voice,
Right.
and my co-founder and I and all the great team members there, we created that together. It's the cumulative impact of that ripple effects of capitalism, which is a very real thing. You know, capitalism is the greatest invention of humanity. It's lifted billions out of starvation and poverty. It's really a choice, and it's a tall order because we are getting hijacked. And if I just sit back and I wait for the dystopia to get pushed to me, it's going to get pushed to me because the chances are you're going to click on that a lot more than the latest climate change breakthrough.
Yeah.
Right.
One of my friends, Zachary Karabell, launched the Progress Network years ago. And I think it took him around 3 years to get to around 50,000 subscribers. Whereas if you put out a story on the latest Epstein shenanigans or some murder that happened, you're probably going to get 50,000 readers pretty fast. And so,
Yeah.
you know, that's the nature of the way that we're wired. And that's why fear can be such a powerful motivator, but it's highly toxic to ourselves as leaders and the people that we lead.
Let's
Yeah,
talk about.
and it's very counterproductive. First of all, very well said. I have really thoroughly enjoyed everything that I've heard and read from you. And
Thank you.
you're really speaking our language. I mean, the first podcast episode that Jim Bob and I did was titled "I'd Rather Be Loved Than Feared," talking all about how important it is to not allow yourself to go down that path, that negativity path.
Yep.
And we talked a bit about in that podcast and really in most of our episodes, because we tend to go back to a lot of the same things because it drives so much, what a slippery slope it is for a leader to take that negative path when they're feeling pressure, when they're feeling a little bit like they're over their heads, that inferiority complex kind of
Which
thing.
means they're in a state of fear.
Yes. So speak to that, if you would, in your own experience. How do you think a leader, whether they're middle management on up to management, I think middle managers have it almost harder in many ways because they're getting pressure from above and pressure from below, how to not allow themselves to take that path that's negative.
There's many different paths there. I mean, Warren Buffett just retired from being the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway. And in his final letter, he's the human being alive today that I look up to the most as a leader. In his final shareholders letter, he said, the most important thing you can do as a young leader is find the person you want to model after and then copy everything that they do. And I choose to copy everything that he does because he ultimately knows how to manifest love. I've seen it directly. I'll tell you 2 Warren Buffett stories. Number one, I was very proud to be able to spend 4 hours with him with a small group of people that was set up by a Henry Crown Fellow that is part of the same group I'm in at the Henry Crown Fellowship out of Aspen Institute. It's a very special leadership group. And we go take Ollie the trolley to go pick him up. This is in Omaha. His house today is worth around $460,000. This is a guy worth over $100 billion.
Yeah.
It's the same house he's been living in for many decades.
Yeah.
We go to the country club that he's a member of, and we spend 4 hours with him. And he tells us a bunch of stories. And one of my favorite stories was during the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. He got a call from the CEO of Goldman Sachs. This was after Lehman Brothers went out of business. And so the markets were panicked. We all thought that we were going to go from a great recession into a great depression, that capitalism was about to falter, and we were going to have, bread lines like we did during the Great Depression all over again.
Sure.
And the CEO called him, and Warren Buffett said to him, "Hey, I know why you're calling. Now, let me put this in context. Warren Buffett reads 4 hours a day, every day. Okay. So he already knows the numbers of Goldman Sachs. He knows what's going on. He says, I'm having ice cream with my great granddaughter here at Dairy Queen. Kind of a funny aside, Berkshire Hathaway owns Dairy Queen. And he says, I'll call you back in 30 minutes. He calls him back in 30 minutes and he talks to him for 10 minutes and he decides to give them a $10 billion loan to save Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs would have gone out of business. They would have gone bankrupt had Warren Buffett not do that. Warren Buffett was then excoriated all over CNBC because people were saying, they were all in states of fear, and they were saying the old man has fallen off his rocker. They were saying very derogatory things like that. He has absolutely lost his mind. He's given one of the worst loans he's ever given. He's going to regret this. And it turned out to be one of the best loans in capitalism history, and it bailed out America, not just Goldman Sachs. Now, he didn't do that solely. There were other people that really came to the table, like Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan. Obviously, the Fed came to the table to help with bailouts. There were lots of companies saved, but it was a really uniting moment, and America got back on track. And Warren Buffett was on lots of talk shows after this happened saying he believes in the best of America and the entrepreneurial ecosystem we have, and that we'll be back. And since then, we've had an absolutely amazing rise of the stock market. It would have been the single best time to invest. It's been a bull market almost ever since then. So let me just break down what this tells you about Warren Buffett, okay, as someone to model. Number one, he realized what's important. How many people would have said, I'll call you back in 30 minutes because they wanted to finish up ice cream with their great granddaughter, okay?
Right.
Number two, it shows he's extremely well studied. He has the pattern recognition to realize what the right decision is to do in 10 minutes, okay, to make a $10 billion decision. Number three, everybody calls him a fool, and he's got conviction because, again, he has a track record, a history of seeing America go through many different booms and busts, and he knows that it's going to come back. And so this tells you all you need to know about the man. And he ended the shareholder letter last week with a line at the very end, which almost moved me to tears, which said, remember that the cleaning lady is every bit as much of a human being as the chairman. Okay. And let me tell you this one more story about him. The second story is Sam Taylor was a very dear friend of mine. We used to serve on the board of shop.org, which is what at the time was the largest trade organization for e-commerce companies, part of the National Retail Federation, which is still the largest trade association for retailers. Sam became the CEO of Oriental Trading. Oriental Trading sells those tchotchkes you get during Halloween, et cetera. Okay. His company was owned by private equity. He was really suffering under that ownership. They were looking for every last nickel. They didn't care about the people there. And Sam Taylor was like a dolphin in water at these trade shows. He's constantly manifesting love. He's one of the most energetic guys I know. Unfortunately, rest in peace and power, Sam. He crossed over. He died from brain cancer. He fought a very heroic battle with it. But I was at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, and Warren Buffett had bought his company a few months before. Okay. And I asked Sam, I was in this breakout session that Phil Terry, one of my very dear friends, hosts an annual Berkshire Hathaway meeting. And he has some of the CEOs of the portfolio companies so that he can talk about the lessons learned with credibility, because these CEOs are living it, of Charlie Munger, who also has passed away recently, as well as Warren Buffett, as well as the whole structure of Berkshire Hathaway. And I asked Sam what it was like in front of everybody, these 80 leaders, what it was like to go to PE, from PE ownership to Warren Buffett buying the company. And Sam Taylor started crying in front of 80 people.
Wow.
And I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Right? This is one of my best friends. And now he's crying in front of all these people. And he choked back the tears and he said, I want you to know how much we're suffering. You know how much I care about people. And I was having a really difficult time being able to express that when I was owned by PE, because it was obvious they didn't care about any of us, including me. He said once Warren Buffett bought the company, he would constantly visit us. He would look everybody in the eyes and shake their hands. No one was treated as beneath him, including everybody in the call center or on the factory floor. Yeah. And he allowed me to manifest love. Okay. This is a guy who is worth $100 billion. And I would see him at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, walk the trade show floor and shake the hands of every trade show employee for the companies like Brooks, my favorite running shoes, etc. Yeah. And I would see him just have just the biggest smile on his face, just a man that was truly in love with his craft. Okay. Yeah. Think how many people you know that are like that have even a tiny fraction of that wealth. So model people like that, get to the point where you study them. There's so many great resources now. There's the Founders podcast by David Senra. His last name is Senra. There are so many autobiographies on these individuals at this point. There's a Netflix TV show on Warren Buffett. But whoever you pick, and there's some leaders today that I would not pick, right? Mm-hmm. One of them I would not pick is Elon Musk. I think that he's an amazing innovator. Okay, I really look up to him from an innovation standpoint. I'm a shareholder in SpaceX. That's going to be one of our largest returns. I drive a Tesla. Okay, I think in so many ways he's great. Austin, where I live, Tesla is the largest private employer, and they finished the Giga Texas factory at the end of 2021. Right. And they have 23,000 employees in Austin. Okay, Dell, which Michael Dell was prior to this, the wealthiest Texan, has 11,000 employees in Austin. Okay, yeah. So I mean, hats off to him. Okay, but this is a guy who tweets about Genghis Khan and is rumored, and he doesn't help himself by tweeting about Genghis Khan, to pay women $100,000 a month to have his babies as long as they'll sign an NDA. Yeah. And that's not someone I would model after, but that's a choice. And, as Walter Isaacson profiled him, you don't know if you're getting the good Elon or the bad Elon from day to day. So it's highly variable whether or not he's going to berate you that day and try to make you feel like an idiot, or whether or not he is going to try to bring out the best in you. And he does both, but he's both the light and the dark in one person. What this tells me is that he is suffering inside. There is something broken in him through his childhood or whatever else. And I would not model myself after someone like that, even though you could take his innovation lessons and model those, right? But I would not model the whole person. And so pick your mentors very carefully. It's really important. And I think it's really important that we don't look the other way when there's leaders that are so wealthy. He is maybe the wealthiest person in the world, and say, because he's so wealthy, let's worship money over principles and model on that. Yeah. I just think that is the opposite thing. What we should be worshiping is selfless service to each other. We should be worshiping the ability for love to conquer our own fears. We should be worshiping the ability for humanity to transcend the age that we're in And whether you look at it metaphorically or mystically, allow heaven and earth to merge
Right.
so that we can have abundance everywhere, including countries like Chad. That is what we should be striving for, not to get some massive yacht and say, hey, look at me. Because in everybody that owns something like that, there's just a broken child. And look, I have material items, okay, I'm here in a huge house, et cetera, et cetera. I get it, but those aren't the way that I derive happiness. They're just not. I derive happiness from deep connection with my family, deep connection with people I work with, deep connection with all the beautiful letters that I receive from people saying, your podcast has created a heart shift in me.
Nice.
That type of stuff is important to me,
Yeah.
not like some trinket that I can wave in your face and say, look at me.
Yeah.
Brad, I'd love to go back to a couple of things. And you've talked about toxicity and how when you lead from fear, when you have a fear mindset that's toxic to you, it's toxic to the environment that you're in. I want to talk about that a little bit, but also like to talk about just the practical aspect of what it looks like in the trenches for someone to recognize that they're operating from fear, that they're passing that on as part of their culture, and how that toxicity plays across. So what that practicality looks like. But I also want to talk about the exponential benefit that you experience from your employees from Bizarre Voice, who and even I was just even thinking of the mindset of that. If someone is the owner of a company or a manager in a company, and they're thinking from a perspective of, I'm afraid that my employees are going to take what they learn here, that they're going to have their own entrepreneurial spirit, that they're going to build their own stuff, they're going to leave me. I'd love to see if I could kind of capture kind of what your thinking was in the early days of Bizarre Voice, if you can even project back to what that felt like to create an environment that later you see really what the potential is. You couldn't have possibly known that there would have been that many, companies spawn off of it. But how did that feel? How does it feel now? And talk maybe through those different points.
So I'll give you a couple of stories. And let me start out with the statistics first.
Okay.
So Bizarre Voice was rated the number one place to work in Austin.
Right.
When it was small, medium, and large. Okay. I think it's the only company to have won in all three categories as it grew.
Wow. Yeah.
As it grew, we grew into different size categories, and we were named number one in all three categories that were offered by the Austin Business Journal, which did surveys of our employees. We never told them what to say. We always told them to be really honest. And we really wanted to see a reflection. And frankly, every time we got rated the number one place to work, I was kind of astonished because I could see a lot of things wrong in the company. I never thought it was perfect. Okay. I want to be really honest about that. But we were manifesting more love than other people. And that really leads to people bringing their best selves to work and their whole selves to work. And that's a very beautiful thing. So let me tell you a couple of stories. At Bizarre Voice, Brant and I decided that we wanted to hire people. Brant Barden was my co-founder, that would be truly passionate about their work. So we developed something called the test. The test was we'd get to our finalist and we'd call them on, let's say, a Friday. And let me just give you an example of one for a salesperson. So we had 3 finalists. We'd call them and we'd say, hey, we need you to do this test. We need you to come in on Monday or Tuesday, present to us like we're a prospect. You'll have around 30 minutes to present. We'll have an hour overall. We're all going to play roles the whole time. So tell us which prospect you want us to be. You could say you want us to be P&G, for example. We'll make up the roles on our side. We'll show up to that meeting and we'll see if you can sell us on buying Bizarre Voice. Now, we didn't give them any materials in this at all. And it was up to them to craft that presentation. Now, why did we do this on a Friday? Is that kind of cruel? No, because if they're truly passionate about it, they're going to set aside the time on that weekend to express that passion. Do we want people to always work on the weekends? Of course not. But if we got a RFP, a request for proposal from Procter & Gamble on a Friday, and it was due on a Monday, are we going to work that weekend to turn it around? Or are we just going to let a competitor do that? I think we're going to work. and turn it around. And so ultimately, we were testing whether or not, in the face of competitive alternatives, whether or not they were truly passionate about doing it. And we were able to then compare 3 candidates to each other and hire the one that we thought we would buy from. And because of this, we went with some very non-traditional candidates, people that had never sold enterprise software, but really blew the doors off all the people that did. You know? And some of my best friends today really credit us for giving them that opportunity. One of the best we've ever hired was this guy, Tony Capasso, who was a CEO of a nonprofit prior to joining Bazaar Voice as an individual sales guy. And today he's the CEO of a company called On Profit, which we're proud investors of. And he's one of the best CEOs I know.
Nice.
And he's really grown into that. Why am I telling you this story? When I would go and speak about culture and why were we rated #1 place to work, I would speak at different CEO events and I would tell this story. And you know what most CEOs would say? They would say, I would never do that. I would lose everybody in my funnel. Nobody would do this type of assignment. And I said, respectfully, you're doing it wrong. Because in my experience, over 90% of the time, people take on this assignment. And this is the ultimate test on whether or not they really want to be there. And I apologize for saying this to you. I'm not trying to be insulting, but I think you're too afraid of doing this because you don't have the type of people in your pipeline or the type of culture at your company where people would actually endeavor to spend this amount of time to make sure that it's right for you and it's right for them. Remember, this is them getting to try on for size coming to work for you.
Yeah.
And so fear holds back a lot of leaders. And look, as we did this, some of these were real leaps of faith. I mean, I did not learn from another company to do this type of test.
Right.
It was a brainstorm between me and Brent. And we were trying to create something very unique. And it worked. But we were doing it from a place of trying to create a higher vibratory field of love in the company that we created. We were men on a mission trying to really change the world of commerce to be much more authentic, to allow people to really converse with each other in both the positives and negatives about products. We were really trying to create a revolution. There were only 3 retailers in the entire United States when we started Bazaar Voice that had customer reviews. Now Bazaar Voice is worth billions of dollars. It is across the world in over 50 international languages. It has over 14,000 customers. And it really has become the worldwide standard for customer reviews. But you got to overcome your fears to try things out. And nobody becomes great by just doing the same thing that everybody does. It's like sheep. Like, oh, everybody incorporates in Delaware. Okay, we'll do that. Oh, everybody does it as a C Corp. Okay, we'll do that. Oh, everybody does it this way. Think about the cultures you really love. They're all people who were willing to take risk, but they were all operating from a deep place of love. Whether it's Whole Foods, John Mackey is one of my best friends, the founder of Whole Foods. I look forward to my first book called The Entrepreneur's Essentials. He's going to be on Love Conquers Fear soon. I'm actually recording that with him next week. And he's a deeply spiritual person, but he operates from that place of love. And you could feel it inside of Whole Foods. Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, rest in peace, Tony. He was an amazing guy. He operated from that place of love. And we copied something that Zappos had. We had a cultural ambassadors program at Bazaar Voice where we'd go learn from other top rated places to work. And they had something called Zappos University where it lasted for 4 weeks and everybody went through it. And even if you're the CFO, you had to work the call center for a week. And it was brilliant because what was that doing? It was creating deep levels of connection in the company. It was saying nobody's above anybody else. Yes, there's hierarchy. You need some hierarchy. We're trained since we're kids to have a teacher and we've got to do the assignments on time, et cetera. The world needs some hierarchy, but the best type of hierarchy is not one where it's about oppressing others and trying to manifest fear in them or hey, look at me, I'm so amazing compared to you, or all this other bullshit that we have to overcome.
Sure.
And so for me, I've walked a very spiritual path because all the ancient spiritual texts are about love conquering fear. They're all about doing the deep inner work. I'm a Jewish guy, and Judaism, the core mantra of it is tikkun olam, let's repair the world. But if you're a Christian, Christianity is all about the kingdom of God is found within you. And what that's teaching you is that you have to manifest your ability to allow love to conquer fear and conquer your own demons. And if you treat your spouse wrong or your kids wrong or your employees wrong, that is a reflection of you. It's a mirror of the demons that you have inside of you, which, look, we all have some of those. They're all deep levels of programming we've received since we were born. But I would just say to you that two babies in a crib, they don't think about each other as I'm a Muslim, you're a Jew, I'm a man, you're a woman, I'm from this caste, you're from that caste, my parents have this, your parents don't. All of these things that just don't matter at all. Like there's divinity and beauty in all of us, and we're all beautiful souls at our core.
Exactly said. Oh, one last question for you, Brett. I'm going to bring this back to something that I've been encountering a lot. I know you know that I'm in the process, aside from being a consultant, leadership and culture consultant, I also am a Vistage chair, and I'm building a Vistage group here in Houston.
Yeah. I'm very involved in YPO, and it's been a helpful group.
Vistage is a great next step to YPO when people age out of YPO. But the interesting thing that I come across many times is so many executives, CEOs, business owners. I hear a lot of, I just don't have time for a peer group. I don't have time to do this because I'm doing a million things at once. And this is something that when I was running other people's companies, I wish that I had the opportunity to have a peer group to be able to bounce ideas off of, to spend some time thinking through opportunities and have people challenge me and pressure test my thoughts or my concerns and things like that. And I'm not saying this is an advertisement. What I'm saying is it's a common theme.
Right.
That when people are so busy, they are so in the weeds, that is fear-based as well.
It is. And it's fear-based and it's a lack of creativity. Let me explain this. I studied in India under Swamiji Parthasarathi, and one of his observations is he meets one CEO who has a $1 million business, and the CEO says, I have no time. He meets another CEO who has a $10 million business, and that CEO says, I have no time. He meets another CEO with a $100 million business, and that CEO says, I have no time. Another CEO has a $1 billion business and says, I have no time. What does this tell you? This tells you that all of them are not prioritizing what actually matters. I'll give you a quick Michael Dell story because it's one of my favorite stories. So we were having dinner at his home, and his son Zachary joined us. And this guy at the dinner said, in front of Michael Dell, he said, how can you be there at all for Zachary? You've created one of the biggest companies in the world. You're flying all over the place. There's no way that you could have been there at the family dinners. And this guy was kind of autistic. And he said this in front of Michael Dell to Zachary's face. I turned beet red because I frankly lost my emotional composure. Okay. I was angry.
Wow.
And Zachary, without blinking, Zachary is leading Base Power, which is worth over $1 billion. It's like creating a solar energy revolution in Texas and beyond.
Wow.
Zachary, without blinking, said, I want you to know he's my best friend. He's always been there for me at the most important family moments. He is always available to me. It's the opposite of what you're saying. He's the best dad I could have. And I literally, Richard and Jim Bob, I had to turn away because I started crying. I'm not kidding. I went from rage to tears of, oh my gosh, I hope I can be that type of dad.
Yeah.
And later on in my life, much later on, I won this award in 2017, which is called the Legacy CEO of the Year Award in Austin. And they recorded my kids. They were much younger back then. They're 16 and 21 now. And they asked them questions like, how hard does your dad work? How many hours a day specifically, or how many hours a week? And one guessed 10 hours a week, another guessed 15 hours a week. And I thought, okay, that's winning.
That's winning.
And it was really cool. It was a very important mirror, right?
Yeah.
And I was trying to learn from and model Michael Dell because of that moment, that formative moment, which I'll never, ever forget for the rest of my life. So it is a prioritization. Now, there are a lot of things I don't do that a lot of other people do. I almost never watch TV. I choose to read often. I listen to a lot of books on Audible. I tend to do those while I'm doing housework, whether it's folding the clothes or doing the laundry or washing something or, taking the dogs out or exercising. I'm very committed to exercising around 45 to 50 minutes a day.
Yeah.
I do a long hike in the morning if I can turn a meeting into that. Obviously, we can't turn this type of meeting into that because we're on Zoom here.
So you're a walk and talk guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so, there are some meetings where it actually allows me to focus more because I don't have a bunch of stuff binging and bonging in front of my eyes on the
Right.
computer. I can just focus specifically on that person, especially if it's a really deep conversation that we need to have. Or I'll just invite them over if they live in Austin. We'll go on a walk together. I do that a lot
Totally.
too. So you can look at your time and choose your time accordingly and create time by not doing a lot of things that aren't going to really benefit you that much. I mean, it's great to watch some fictional stories sometimes, and I'm not saying I never go to the movies or whatever. I just do it a lot less than most people I know because I choose to focus on things that have a lot more meaning and are a lot more enduring. And I'm making investments in myself and other people. And I'm trying to lead a life of selfless service to others as well. So, it's a choice. And for me, YPO was a choice. For you, Vistage is a choice.
Right.
You really bare your soul in the forum meetings, either at YPO or Vistage, where
Sure.
you can talk very candidly about yourself and your own balance, your spouse, your kids, your business. You can get confidential advice from people. That's been very beneficial to me. I chose to prioritize that, and it's got compounding advantages over time. And
Mhm.
one thing I just want to say is that a lot of people listening to this could say he's got wealth, he can choose to do all these things, he has the time to do all these things. And I just want to say to you that a lot of the most spiritual people I've ever met have almost no money at all.
Yeah.
They're in countries like Bhutan or places like Kenya or Tanzania. They have scarcity that you cannot imagine in America. It almost doesn't exist here. Yes, there are poor people in America for sure. There's homeless. That's a real problem. But overall, we have abundance here that is pretty much unimaginable across the world. We would make the Romans blush with the level of abundance that we have versus what
Yeah.
they have.
Sure.
And they choose to prioritize like working on their inner core. They choose to prioritize being deeply present with people in person. And so it's a choice. It really is a choice. And you can make those choices and it's your life to live. And if you invest in yourself, again, it could be spirituality, it could be stoicism, it could be just regular exercise, it could be walks in nature. Like you can find some time to center yourself every day.
We all have the same amount of time, don't we?
Exactly.
We all
The
have the
same
same amount
same
of
24
time.
hours in a day that we can choose to use however is the most productive for you. Some people need a little bit of a suspension of what is it, the willful suspension of disbelief to be able to go and see a Marvel movie that's obviously not real, but it's really entertaining if that's your thing. But you have the same amount of time as I do,
All right.
and you spend time doing the things that you find most beneficial for you. I think that many leaders tend to forget the best way to focus their time in ways that are not just beneficial for the work that they have at hand,
Mm-hmm.
but also for themselves and also for their family and for the most important people in their lives.
Yes, that's very well said. And you can find the time, but it does require trade-offs. And I'm not saying never go watch a movie, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying that look, I'll give you a great example of what one of the things I've learned in life. People that have newborns at home tend to be the most radically efficient people I've ever worked with. And if I compare my life, I've been married for 29 years to Deborah. If I compare my life pre-kids, we were married for 8 years prior to having kids, to post-kids, my life got radically more efficient after the
Mhm.
kids. Why? Because I wanted to be there. I wanted to be a present to them. There were so many things that I did to waste time to ingratiate myself or my fantasies through watching a movie or whatnot. And you can do that. I mean, there's those old memes about what have you done now? I've watched all of Netflix, right? And you could choose to do that, but I will tell you that's probably not going to have a beneficial impact on your life. You're giving up a tremendous amount of exercise to do that. You're giving up a tremendous amount of in-person connection. If you're running a business, you're much better off calling a customer, calling an employee, expressing love, like asking them how you can do better, spending time with them, going on a hike with them, going to play golf if that's your thing with them, whatever it is. I don't play golf because that's such a big time sink. I've never liked it because of that reason. But look, life is a constant series of trade-offs, including whether or not you study something like Vedanta or Stoicism or spirituality. And I will tell you, if you read a lot of the spiritual text, and I'm not religiously dogmatic, I want to make that point.
Yeah.
I am a big believer that this reality that we're in is one where it's loving at its core. And whether someone reaches that through something like meditation or psychedelics, or they've had a near-death experience, which around 15 million Americans have had, we know that we live in a loving universe. That is the reality beyond this veil that we're in right now. And in this world of form, we're constantly under assault by this dystopia pushed to us all the time, by the toxins being engineered in our foods to create chemical addiction, by the pharmaceutical companies, which legally have manufactured heroin, it's called opioids, and created a crisis in the country. And so I'm not saying that it's all dystopian. I'm just saying that if you don't steady yourself and work on yourself, then you're just going to be whipsawed and you're just going to be pushed around in the system, and it's going to make you angrier and bitter. And guess what that's going to mean for your employees? You think you're going to show your best self if you're in that state? No, nobody could show their best selves in that state. You cannot feel the emotion of fear and love at the same time. It does not exist. One of the best books I read recently is one John Mackey recommended called Love is Letting Go of Fear. A phenomenal book. It's actually a derivative of a book called A Course in Miracles, but it's a phenomenal book. It's a 2.5-hour listen on Audible. Can you find 2.5 hours? Yeah, I think you could skip one movie and find 2.5 hours. It'll change your life.
Yeah.
Right.
Brett, I'll tell you, I could talk to you for hours and hours. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of time. I really appreciate you giving us your time. And I know how much you seem to be doing. And for listeners or people who are viewing this podcast, please check out Brett's podcast, Love Conquers Fear. It's a lot. I mean, he goes over so much, and it gives you a lot to think about. You can apply it to your daily life. You can apply it to so many things. You can apply it from our standpoint, from a business perspective. There is so much that you can apply it to. And I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you joining Jim Bob and myself here for this conversation.
You bet. It's an honor. And thank you for the light you're putting out there. I mean, you decided to start a podcast called Nice Business, and I wouldn't have joined this podcast if it was called Jerk Business. So I'm here for a reason, and you're choosing to try to manifest love through this. And that is exactly what I'm all about. I really believe that the best run companies are the ones that are able to manifest love. They're the most enduring. They're the most important in the world. And it doesn't mean that they're going to get it right all the time. They're going to make mistakes. And the fear-based mindset is ready to beat them down if they make one slip up or miss one quarter and just say, see, I told you, you can't be nice in business. But the reality is that you can. And if you look at the companies that have been the most enduring, I really don't think you would say those companies are one where they're manifesting fear. I just don't. I don't think that's sustainable.
Agreed.
Amen.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to future discussions with you.
You bet. Yeah, good luck to you both.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Nice Business Podcast. We hope you got some valuable information and inspiration. We're always looking for great stories that will help your business be more kind and successful. And if you know of one we should hear or someone that would be a great interview, please let us know. To contact me, click the link here to go to my website or use this QR code. I wish you a nice business.